can hear me, right? My audio settings aren't messed up on my audio interface. Okay, great. But can you see me now? No? Okay, let me see. I'm gonna smack the shit out of the camera really quick. All right, let me see. Let me see. Hold on. Did you like that? I just smacked my leg. I don't think it sounded like a like a camera at all. That I was hitting some metal object. Anyway, but good morning. Welcome to the show. Now you can see me. That's crazy, right? I feel like I can't hide anything now. Like you can see like my audio interface, kind of my notebook for thoughts. I have a cup of water usually. Um and you can see how I do the applause now, which is just like I don't know, I guess it came with like this audio interface when I bought it. Um it's just like a preset thing. It wasn't even like um anything that I got to decide. So there's a couple of these in here now that I can show you. So there's the applause, which you're obviously familiar with. I have like a like a little drum thing, right? That's pretty fun. I have these two other weird ones, which are like kind of funky, different things. I don't know what that horn jazz. That's what it's called, horn jazz. I don't know what that would be used for, but seems fun, right? And then I got this other one, which could be a fun like podcast intro or like a radio show intro. But I have no use for this, and to my knowledge, you can like customize these, but I never figured it out, and I was also like kind of lazy to do it, so that's kind of the main reason for that never happening. But maybe this season we'll get around to it, right? So good morning, welcome to the show. Hopefully you've been well. Now you can see me. Maybe you can grab a snack, grab some popcorn, something like that. I feel like my go-to with podcasts are like usually like a cup of coffee, or like a little pan, so like a little concha or something is what I usually have when I listen to podcasts, because it'll be either in the morning or on like kind of a longer commute to work or coming back from work. Those are usually the times when I have a decent chunk to just like listen to something. And I hope you're doing the same. Um, so today is actually, to me, I think it's a pretty important episode, for a few different reasons. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that there's a visual. Um, Hopefully, you like the set, right? I put in all of 30 minutes to put this together when I realized I needed to come up with a set for when I'm by myself doing these episodes. I realized I needed to come up with a set, and this is what I came up with. We have some great stuff for the actual set when we have guests and that sort of thing. But this is sort of the solo bit. It gives you a little bit of a sneak peek of what's to come. Um, so there's that. That's obvious. Another thing that's pretty exciting is the fact that I have a producer involved on the show. She's a previous guest. I kind of mentioned it loosely in the beginning of the last episode, but yeah, I have a producer. Shout out Navneen Goraya. She couldn't make it today, just to this recording session, but she's producing this episode in spirit, which is kind of funny that it's the first one and she's not here, but it's okay. But I want to get into kind of the old way that I used to do things, what's changed, what carried over into the new process, obviously, and sort of my initial motivation to kind of restart the show. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it. God, it's so weird. I can't hide anything. You know what I mean? Like this is just so. I understand now what actors feel like when they say they can't perform to a lens. Like it's both. How do I put it? It's very sterile, but it also feels weirdly like surveillancy. Think like Hal from 2001. Like that's what it feels like, but also like the way that this lens is built out. Um, that's it looks a lot like Hal is what is what I'm trying to get at, and it's kind of insane to get used to. So how did I used to run things? Well, um, it's been overall very much like a one man band. I just sort of produce these episodes myself. I handled the show's like audio aspect, which for a long time has been an audio only show. This has been the device that has held me down through and through since about 2023 when I first started the show. Um, there and I've also been the one to deal with the editing. So on top of my current workload as a cinematographer, I've been kind of trying to juggle this at the same time, right? And that was kind of the way I ran things. For me, um, at the time, I didn't really have a camera. I think up until like maybe like mid 2025, I didn't really have a camera to record this sort of thing. I always had like dedicated devices for other things. Like I always had like a camera that I'd hire for something, or I used to have like a different sort of camera for this sort of scenario and that sort of thing. And that's still very much the case here, but I now have a dedicated camera that I'm filming this episode on and all future episodes now. Um, but prior to dealing with the camera stuff, it was always just an audio show. I would basically record these episodes either in person or on a Zoom call. And I would intake that, edit that, kind of chop it up, give um, talent or whoever, I guess for the sake of the guest, um, I would always give the guest, kind of an opportunity to change different things, and they'd have kind of a custom URL that they'd access on my website to kind of preview things and kind of understand like, okay, this is how it's going to come out. This is the titling. And for any sort of like PR person, they can also access that as well. If in case, maybe they see something that the guest doesn't, or maybe they're like, hey, maybe for PR reasons, let's avoid this, that sort of thing. And I think just having full control over the post process is really nice, that I can give that sort of flexibility to the main guest to kind of see like, is this something they feel confident standing behind, and that sort of thing. Because it's part of like a public thing. It's a part of a PR thing, and so I think it's a good thing to give the opportunity after the fact to sort of change like, maybe I can't talk about that yet, or oh, maybe I don't I want to wait to launch this thing, so then we should wait to launch the episode. At least the main thing I try to keep in mind is like, I want to preserve the intimacy a little bit of kind of the episodes, and kind of keeping things pretty like one to one with guests. And that's something that I've enjoyed about the current format of things. um and I think that's sort of what allows, and I think that's sort of the reason like why it's kind of popular, or what people like about it, is that it's kind of an insider baseball on certain people's processes, or just kind of like a sneak peek and like eavesdropping into a conversation. I think that's something that, from what I've seen, what from people have told me about the show, is that they've really enjoyed that. And for me, it's been pretty important to kind of maintain that uh eavesdropping sort of nature of the show, I guess. um that being said, this current workflow that I have for this isn't the most ideal thing. Right, like the moment I try to introduce somebody else into the picture, it kind of becomes it kind of like instantly falls apart. There isn't any sort of system in place where um you know I could hand this off to somebody. It's just sort of like, I'm kind of, it kind of became like another thing that I was juggling, which was kind of partially why I kind of stepped away from it. We'll get into that more later, but that was kind of partially why I stepped away from it, because it became pretty like overwhelming to kind of juggle this along with, my cinematography work, my rental sort of work where I rent my equipment to people, this studio space is another thing, right? That became like a pretty um I don't want to say insignificant, because I feel like that's the wrong word, but it it wasn't as relevant, unfortunately, compared to other things that I had going on. And so as a result, it kind of took a back seat. You know, I really do like the show and I really care about it, of course, but um above, sort of like hard pressed deadlines, above, just family matters, like those things obviously come first, and this sort of podcast is a very much a secondary thing, and it remains a secondary thing. But I think I coming back to it, I wanted to give it some proper TLC, some proper, attention that I think it needed. And I kind of wanted to step into sort of a new workflow and a new way of doing things. And I wanted to challenge myself a little bit that I feel like I wasn't being challenged before, where it sort of felt like, oh, I could do it just because. Whereas I think I needed to put the full, DP muscle or the full strength of what I know I'm capable of doing. um that was something that I desperately needed to consider, and I'm glad that I'm doing it now, which takes us to the next section of the episode, which is kind of what's new. How has it changed? What's sort of different about the workflow now? How has what's going to happen moving forward? So we'll get into that. So what's changed? You guys already know kind of the way that I usually do things, kind of the visual aspect that's currently in place. You kind of know already what's kind of the format of the show, the topics that we get into. And you kind of know already the voice. You know me. Now you see me. Um, that's fundamentally that thing that's going to stay the same. The format, the questions, and the topics, fundamentally that's not going to change, right? The new things are obviously, number one, you see me. I apologize if it seems like I've been hiding. I promise you I'm not trying to hide. I just, I'm not the best when it comes to being on the opposite side of the lens. When it comes to photographing people, whether photos or video, I'm great at that. Like check out my Instagram, hire me. You know, like I'm pretty good at that. Um, but when it comes to being in front of it, that takes a whole other skill, and that's a whole other, muscle that I'm wanting to exercise. And I think it's also like on a personal level too. Like it's very much like I'm definitely not one to enjoy being photographed, I guess. I mean, not that I'm like anti photograph or something, right? It's something that I'm trying to get over actively. And I think it's important for me to sort of photograph myself and kind of be able to look back and kind of see the way that I evolved and the way that I did things and sort of my mental process and, that sort of thing. Because I remember even like, I think like the earliest episodes, thinking back to what my headspace was like, I was like, damn, like, you know, this guy's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, and I wish I had taken the time to photograph things more. Not that I don't, right? Like, I'm not like, if somebody takes a photo of me on set or if somebody takes a photo of me at like a family event, I'm not going to say no to that, right? But I think overall, I want to make it a good practice to, be in front of the camera and be comfortable being photographed, because I know it kind of goes along, and the ability to kind of showcase those things I think could help me just on a personal level, and also just like being seen and getting more eyes on my work and getting hired and that sort of thing. So that's like my primary motivation for it. But yes, there's a visual aspect. I'm challenging myself a little bit more with it. And I hope it reflects, because I am really having a hard time with this. It's weird to sort of look at somebody where I'm just so used to like just looking at like something to fixate on, and I'm just like riffing or doing whatever. Like this is way more comfortable for me. This is hell right here. This is a nightmare. But I'm getting better, and I hope you guys can see that. I hope it comes across as more episodes come out. Obviously, I'm not going to be staring at the camera all the time, right? But when I get into it with guests and that sort of thing, I hope it reflects, and I'm able to showcase that like things are getting better, and I'm actively, evolving as a person and as a cinematographer and that sort of thing. But what else is there? So that's the main elephant. That's the main new thing. But also, um, there's there's a new workflow, right? I'll get into like pre-production, production, and then post. So pre-production, there's a little bit more planning involved. Navneen and I have kind of decided that we're just going to bulk plan a bunch of episodes. So maybe over the course of like 2-3 days, we're going to shoot a bunch of episodes, and sort of have the set pre-built and just kind of knock them out and kind of get them in rapid succession. Because an important thing, I guess, is just scheduling and just trying to get our schedules aligned, and just nailing that communication is something that I want to refine. And I think being able to bulk record a bunch of episodes, I think, is going to really help nail that workflow um, really quickly, because we can easily see like, okay, there's a snag here, there's a snag there. Let's try and evolve this, and let's change things. So right now we're planning a couple episodes, and so far so good, but it's still something that we're going to work on together, and that's something I'm definitely excited about, right? And I can defer somebody else to doing certain things, to logistics, to admin, while I kind of, take the time to sort of research guests, to sort of beef up the questions that I have, and sort of, dig a little bit deeper than I feel like I have been, where I've been kind of, my brain has been scattered to be like, okay, I got to ask this question. They already answered this other question that I was going to ask. I got to I gotta cross this out. I got to answer something. I got to ask something else, the audio interface is up, being able to centralize myself and be like, okay, this is recording. It's fine. Someone else is looking at it. I can look at my notes and then say, okay, I can streamline that conversation a little bit better. And I think in turn, being able to defer somebody else for scheduling, logistics, that sort of thing, allows the flexibility of having better quality episodes. At least that's the aim, right? Um, as far as production goes, I mean, this is kind of a first run at it. I kind of did this all myself in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes to set up. Um, so you let me know what you think, I guess. If you're on YouTube and you can comment something, let me know what you think. Um, but immediately, I kind of already know what I'm going to defer to Navneen. I already know what I'm thinking of deferring to somebody else. So far, so good, right? Like I feel like, things are going well, and this sort of workflow is changing. And I think, right now this is a perfect example, because I'm monitoring on my phone, and I just kind of had to change a setting on the camera, which I don't really want to be doing mid episode, but because it's a solo, I think I can get away with it. Maybe that's a change in the lenses that I'm using. Maybe that's a change in some other settings that I'm using on the camera itself. It's something that I think I will defer to someone else, or I would maybe change something to auto. Not 100% yet what that might look like, but I know this needs to be automized in some capacity. The audio stuff is mostly plug and play. There is like a slight issue with this Zoom interface where kind of the first time I boot it up and the first time I record, it tends to hiccup the recording and kind of overwrites it, like kind of trips on itself, if that makes sense. So I kind of have to let it record and then let it trip up on itself and then cut the recording, and then the next clip is like perfectly fine. So for me, this is less of an issue yet, but I know immediately I want to refine this and I want to get like a. I'm looking at the Rode Podcaster Duo. I think that might be the best thing because I never have more than two guests. But this for now, like it's a something I want to change, but for the time being, it's fine, right? And it sounds okay. I feel like I've had no issues on a sound quality end of things, but I know this will change, right? The set, right? The set, we already have something. Navneen and I have kind of planned like a base set, and then we're gonna go in and evolve it like as the season passes. For example, if we kind of notice like, okay, for this episode, maybe we'll tweak the lighting a little bit. For this episode, let's try to you know um change this thing for this certain guest or this thing for another guest, kind of cater a little bit to inquiries or cater a little bit to sort of what people are looking for and that sort of thing. um but as like a good like base, we have that like kind of locked in, and we're just gonna kind of run with that for this next episode that you guys see, or this next batch of episodes that you guys see. And we're gonna continue to evolve it and kind of see like, okay, this didn't really work, let's change this, or this didn't work, let's change this, or even from like a going back to pre-production a little bit, pre-production and production. We have kind of a new like intake form that we're having, so that way when guests get here, they're comfortable, we're considering their time, if they prefer certain snacks, that's something that we're keeping in mind for that sort of thing, and just making sure that guests are absolutely as comfortable as possible. Hopefully previous guests can vouch for me and say that I've done a decent job at this already. But I'm hoping that, you know as the episode I'm hoping that as the show evolves, so will this process of doing things on a foundation basis. Like, I think, not to brag, but I think we got a good thing going. Shout out Navneen, she's doing incredible. And as far as post production goes, I've it's still me, it's still just me editing this stuff. But I've refined the process substantially. I have sort of a workflow for intaking audio footage. I kind of know the way that I'm going to mix episodes. I kind of know, kind of what assets that I need visually. I have a workflow for subtitling. I have a workflow now for, um, you know, the way that I can get a cutout and how soon I can get a cutout. And because I can sort of like, I don't want to say it's like a copy paste thing, but it's sort of like an easy way. It's an easy enough workflow to take and implement in each episode, and it allows me to kind of churn out an episode within like a week or so, which I think previously I wasn't able to do, where I was very like scrappy and I'm like, oh, I gotta pull this asset from here, and just on like a just to give you some insider baseball, I guess, like the file management that I've been doing for this show is awful. Like, do not ask me where certain files are. I would not know. Now I have everything organized. It's all chronological. It's all archived on my NAS system. Um, and it's been working substantially better. you know, and now that I have this sort of system in place, right? So the rate that I'm able to churn out episodes is going to be substantially uh faster than I otherwise would be able to, right? Um, so um, yeah, for all the way from pre-production, production to post-production, all the way from pre-production to post-production, everything's changed. Like it's essentially a night and day difference. The quality of life has just gone up 10x, so I'm able to kind of it frees up my brain really to be able to then go, okay, what can I ask? What can I say? sort of make episodes a little bit better. What's going to be a way that I can refine, my conversation with guests. What's going to be a way that I sort of evolve myself as a podcaster, and how can I then implement that into my cinematography and vice versa. You know, I'm really, really, really putting a lot of energy and strength and time into this sort of new workflow and this new way of doing things. And I hope it reflects in the guests and the quality of the conversation, and just even this right now. I hope that the criticisms and the sort of commentary around the show is definitely something I take into heavy consideration, and it's valuable for me to know what the audience is thinking, and sort of what's a way that I can make the show better for them and more enjoyable, and what people want to see essentially. So that's where my headspace is at going into this new sort of workflow and this new way of doing things. And I hope it's been enjoyable so far. This is sort of the first episode in this new sort of format, right? So hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm sure you'll let me know if you have some feedback on it, both on a personal level and just like on a stranger level. Like, if some friend sees this, please tell me what you think. I want full feedback on stuff. And also, if you're just kind of a audience member, I don't know you, I'd love to get some feedback on this as well. I want to know what you're thinking, what you want to see from me, who's the type of guest that you want to see, and that sort of thing. Speaking of guests, that's something that I really want to change in this new sort of workflow. I want to change, the types of guests that I have. I think filmmakers will always be, sort of the primary focus of things, obviously, because that's just my personal background, right? That's what I understand the most. That's the way that I can relate to a guest by, artistically expressing themselves in this medium. However, I think, being able to kind of take away other artists' thought process, regardless of the medium that they exist in, I think it could be a really interesting um, way of. Could be really interest. It could be really. I think looking at the way that different types of artists do things, whether it's their process, the way that they sell things, the way that they market themselves. For example, like I think being able to kind of see that um, can open up the doors to conversations of like how artists can support each other, and I think being able to give a platform to showcase, this particular individual's work, I think, is overall a great thing. I want to promote other artists, and I want to kind of understand their thought process, what kind of goes into, the way they create things. What's the first thing they're thinking of? What's the last thing they're thinking of? What's something that they're thinking of that maybe I'm not thinking of, and vice versa. I think those could be really interesting conversations, along with sort of the filmmaker dialogues that I normally have. And I want to open up the doors to that a little bit. So if you guys know of any artists that you think would be cool, of any sort of medium, whether it's a musician, a painter, a photographer, um, or maybe someone you think, in general, somebody that comes to mind that you think would be an interesting guest. If you know me personally, please text me this stuff, because I would love to sort of have somebody on that could be a fun sort of change up for what the format usually is. Um, so yes, a little bit of a tangent, but this is sort of all that's encompassing in the new workflow, um, compared to the old one, and a lot's changed. A lot's changed in this new format, this new way of doing things, and it's a definitely it's a pretty big change for me. It's a lot to kind of adjust to. It's a lot of new weight to adjust to, like, both now that there's a visual and now that there's producer Navneen involved. Like it's a lot to juggle, but I think it's only gonna better the show, and I hope that the quality of the episodes will go up, and I hope you know more people are able to gain insight on these conversations. Aside from myself, like I do this purely for myself. The audience is secondary. I put something that I think I would enjoy first, and someone else enjoying it, I think, is a happy, byproduct of that, right? So hopefully that reflects, and I hope, you know, I'm really reiterating that I hope it's something that people enjoy, and I want people to know that like I'm putting a bunch of TLC, a bunch of love into this, that I really, really, really should have been before. So that kind of leads me to sort of this next thing where like why okay, why the change, right? Was there an ego death? Was there, a sudden life altering experience that sort of made you rethink this? What's going on, man? Honestly, I think it's just sort of been like a general thing. Like I don't know if necessarily ego death is the right word for it, but I think I took a long look at my life. I guess I'm about to get into an ego death. um, Taking a long look at my life and, you know, um, sort of realized that I need to change a lot of things and I need to be honest with myself about where I'm at and, sort of what um, I need to be doing that I'm not doing now. What, like, just I had a very, very honest conversation with myself and I guess as the kids would say, I had a crash out over the course of a weekend where I was just like, I hate everything about where I'm at now, and everything needs to change. Um, and I say hate kind of, you know, loosely here, but I am very much my biggest critic, and I will be the first to say, hey, this is dog and this needs to change, or hey, you should be refining your process better in this way, or hey, you should be, sort of changing your thought process of about this, or hey, maybe you should put a little bit more love in this area, and I sort of looked at my life globally and I was like, I need to change everything. Not and not I need to change everything and not come from a place of like hatred towards myself. You get me? Because as much as yes, I am my biggest critic, I think it comes out in like the worst ways, and I think it's not fair and it's not productive to myself. And I think moving forward, I wanted to lead, with a level of grace and love and just understanding, that I normally would if I was like working with somebody. Had this been me dealing with myself, I would have been like, no, shut the up. You have to put out another episode, or no, shut the up. You gotta be at work. You gotta be present. You gotta do this. You gotta do that. And I don't like that. That's not fair. That's not a mindset that is conducive to success. And I think being overly critical of myself and not giving myself, the sort of grace and love and attention that I sort of need is kind of my Achilles heel. I think, you know, not being able to be fully constructive of my work and not being able to be, fully productive, isn't really helpful. And it sucks because like, some of my best pieces that I've put out, some of my best work, you know, when they first came out, I immediately said like, "Oh, this is trash. I need to change XYZ." Okay, loser, like, you know? Like imagine hearing that from like a mentor. How like unmotivated you would be to, try to evolve your work, right? Or maybe you would be, I don't know. At least for me, I work better with positive feedback, or if it's something that needs to be critiqued, I think there's a way to go about it, right? And I sort of looked at that thought pattern and I'm like, I got to change that, you know? And that goes for everything, the way that I've, the studio is kind of a big thing, right? Because rather than kind of viewing the way that I work in here as like, okay, I gotta, you got to do this, this, and this, otherwise the people in here aren't going to respect you. I still semi feel that way. I think it motivates everyone in here, sort of motivates me to do better, right? But I've also kind of given myself some love and grace, and in turn, I think it's been a positive for the studio in itself. For example, sometimes if I know, like, I have a bunch of extra film that I'm not going to use, I just let somebody take it. We've developed a Polaroid wall, so it's kind of like around the corner. I'm trying to do the math on like how many Polaroids there are. 4, 8, 12. Let's see, 12 by 12 plus 12, 24. There's maybe about 35 Polaroids up right now on the Polaroid wall. That's a lot. It's more than I thought. Now, this is the first time I'm doing the math on it. Um, you know, um, and I think that just being able to cultivate that sense of community and being able to take photos of like, so the Polaroid wall is like basically kind of anybody who comes in here, and I'm like, ooh, I should add you to the Polaroid wall. It's not really like, the basis for who gets on the Polaroid wall isn't like crazy criteria or anything, right? It's just sort of like, if I have the film and I think you're cool, I'll add you to the wall. That's sort of my basis for the way that they go. And I think had I led with like, oh, this sort of filmmaker needs to be on this wall, or oh, this sort of model or artist needs to be on the wall, like that's fucking stupid, right? I think being able to kind of visually, I'm looking at it now, like I'm being able to visually showcase the community and sort of the people that I've brought in here, I think is really fun, and I think it's been a great way to kind of show love and grace to the community that I've fostered in the filmmaking space, and being able to show that, like, hey, these are the people that I think are cool and that I've enjoyed hosting in the studio, like that's a really cool thing. And I want to apply this sort of new mentality into everything that I do, right? In my DP work, for example, I'm definitely still very like heavy-handed in my criticisms and the way that I present my work, because I know, like, I really want to improve my work, and I really want everything to be the to the best that it can be as it pertains to cinematography, right? But the mental dialogue is much different, where I feel like I'm less negative in the way that I criticize my work. Now it's sort of like, okay, this is what I took away from this experience. This is, what I could change. This is how, this conversation with this director should change, and sort of, I take things away and I sort of journal, and I sort of, I took that bit of advice from a director friend of mine, Red, where he sort of journals after the fact, and I've been implementing it for like everything. Damn, sorry y'all. I got completely taken out of it. I had somebody dropping off a rental. But yeah, all this to say, like, I need to give myself a lot more love and grace to like everything I do, and I think it's doing me a disservice. It's doing you a disservice, that I'm not putting a ton of love and TLC, in myself and in my career and in my life that I otherwise should be, so I hope moving forward you're able to see that, like, hey, he's actually putting a little bit more love into this area, or oh, hey, the episodes are getting more dense and more info driven, and I hope that on a cinematographer level, I hope that directors who are working with me, are able to see that, like, hey, I'm evolving and I'm trying to better myself as a human being, and the quality of my work, 10x's, hopefully. 10x is like a crazy number, but hope that you can see that me putting more time and energy into myself reflects into sort of everything else that I'm doing. But yeah, this was definitely a little bit more of a rambly episode. It's definitely, I'm looking at the clock. It's like an hour ish that I've been recording. And I hope this is been saying I hope a lot this episode. But for real, I hope you can see the effort that I'm putting in, and I hope that, there's a little bit more insight and depth to sort of all the episodes that I'm creating. And I hope that, you can gain something out of this. Maybe this is a light bulb moment for you where you kind of realize I should put more energy into myself. And to that I say you should. But yeah, these next couple episodes is going to be sort of the first wave of Navneen and I sort of trying to evolve the show and make it better. And she's ultimately part of a bigger octopus of my life personally, and me trying to sort of cut off different limbs and sort of be able to defer different processes to somebody else while also being able to, do everything I kind of want to, that I want to be able to do, right? So she's ultimately part of a bigger pie, and I thank her for putting any sort of time into this, right? I'm gonna make sure she gets kind of flowers or monetary thing that I think she's entitled to, right? So in due time, I think we'll see the fruits of this sort of positive mindset that I'm trying to bring on into my life and into the show. And I'm really excited for this next sort of chapter of my life, and I'm really optimistic about where I think things are going to go, and where I think this next chapter is gonna take me. Um, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.